There we go. Okay.
And I'm counting 8 ATC members here. Is that, what is quorum? Do you know, Shane?
8 would be quorum because we have 15
Okay.
members, so we need to have at least half the members. So thanks for that count. And I will just real quick stop sharing and read the introductory remarks and then hand it over to the chairs to kick off our August Active Transportation Committee meeting. So good evening, everyone. My name is Shane Rhodes, and I'm the City of Eugene staff representative for this meeting, along with Willow Hamilton. Before the chairs convene the meeting, I have a few reminders and introductory words. So the purpose of the Active Transportation Committee is to advise the City of Eugene staff and community organizations and partners on the implementation of Eugene's pedestrian and bicycle strategic plan. To represent the community and constituents' interests in transportation planning decisions, and to provide feedback to staff on projects relating to walking and bicycling. Eugene City staff will consider recommendations from the ATC along with input from other members of the public during decision-making processes. Please keep in mind that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed to YouTube, meaning that it can be viewed on the City of Eugene Transportation Planning YouTube channel, both right now and in the future. The live transcription feature for closed captioning has been enabled. All verbal and written commentary will be held in the public record. Today's meeting will begin with a 15-minute public comment period. The public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the Active Transportation Committee on transportation-related issues. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. To indicate you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom now. The chairs will call on you when it is your turn, and staff will unmute your microphone at that time. When it is your time to speak, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward or neighborhood. At any time during the meeting, you are welcome to ask a question using the Q&A function or use the chat feature for discussion with other attendees and committee members. Comments will be monitored and recorded. Anyone making inappropriate comments will be restricted from the live portion of the meeting. Questions will be answered at the chair's discretion. As a reminder, civil speech supports everyone in feeling comfortable sharing their perspectives and opinions. Let's give one another the respect of courteous and civil speech tonight. And with that, I'll hand it over to the chairs to convene the meeting.
Okay, well, to the August 11th, I think, meeting of the ATC. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. Shane, do we, or whoever's in charge, do we have public comment?
Yeah, we do. We have Duncan Rhodes, Dan Wilson, and then Dan for Senate are the 3 people. So I'll just bring them in order of their hands raised, if you'd like, and Duncan Rhodes is first.
Okay, and I would like to encourage them, if they're willing, to provide a way for us to contact them in case we want to follow up or get back with them. So you could either put in an email address in the chat if you're willing, or send it to either Shane or Willow if you'd rather not go online. But we'd like a way to get back in touch with you.
It's a good reminder, thanks. I'll bring them in. Duncan, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Yes, Duncan Rhodes from Jefferson West Side. I am in Emily Semple's ward, whichever one that is, I don't know. Anyway, about 4:11, I sent an email to Sue and Mary Christensen on issues that Jefferson West Side would like addressed. And this is a follow-up to emails we had sent earlier on December 10th to the City of Eugene. That's it for me. I'll put my contact info in the chat now. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Duncan. And we did receive that email, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
All right, next I'll bring over Dan Wilson. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Dan.
Hi, everyone. Dan Wilson. 2 things, kudos and a plug. So I wanted to say that I have been just delighted by all of the improvements along High Street. I wanted to applaud staff's efforts at 19th, the shared crossing and protected bikeway there, as well as the connection from, I think, 6th Street to the river. I don't know if that temporary bikeway was just for the Riverfront Festival, or is intended to be something approaching permanent in the future, but it was just wonderful, wonderful. The other thing is that just for anyone here, I wanted to plug Climate Revolutions by Bike is going to be holding a ride on August 27th, Saturday. We're going to be teaching folks how to carry stuff on their bikes, which I think is going to be a really important piece as we grow, to encourage folks to be using their bikes in Eugene for more utilitarian purposes. So if you're interested, you can find out more about Climate Revolutions by Bike. I want to just note that chat is currently disabled, so I cannot put my info in there. But thank you so much, y'all.
Good to see you, Dan. Thanks.
Thanks for letting us know. I didn't know that, so I will make sure that we get that fixed. That's new. That hasn't happened to us before. So I will maybe see if Willow can think around in the background, maybe on the Zoom site, to enable that if we need to. Otherwise, I'll try and figure it out after we get the next person in. So one moment. Okay,
Okay, am I audible?
you are on.
I'm Dan Pulliu, and I've been a bicycle commuter in Eugene for more than 3 decades. I'm here to comment to state my strong opposition to the so-called protected bicycle lanes that are appearing around town, particularly the ones between Lincoln and Kincaid Streets. I've seen no publicity from city officials to demonstrate with facts and reason that these new lanes are either necessary or safe. I believe they are neither. Instead, they slow the flow of traffic and they complicate the rights of way and cause confusion, which is dangerous. I'm here to challenge the authors of this project and this committee, or whomever it is in a position to advise, to publicize a thorough analysis of the affected rights of way and the impact on the smooth flow of traffic, explain in detail why they believe this results in a safer roadway, explain why this supposed increased safety justifies the disruption to traffic flow, explain why it should be funded ahead of badly overdue general road repairs all around town, invite public comment so that their claims can be challenged in genuine public debate, and put any further construction of these lanes on hold until this public debate has run its course. 13th Street was the fastest bike route from Garfield to Kincaid, with only one hairy spot at the lane crossover just past the old library. There is still a lane change there, but all that has been achieved is to drastically slow traffic between Lincoln Street and Kincaid Street. 13th is meant to be a one-way street, and it should be put back the way it was. Thank you.
Thank you. And looks like that is all of the public comments right now. Sue?
Okay, so I guess we do have a couple of minutes if either staff or committee members want to respond to any of our public comment. If not, we'll go ahead with.
Sure. I'll, for Duncan's, I haven't seen the email yet, so we'll see what his information request is, or what those are. And then for Dan Wilson, I will say that the protected bikeway on between 6th and Ferry Street Bridge, or the connection to the path, the temporary portion of that was just temporary for the Riverfront Festival as the path was closed down. So that has been removed once the path was reopened. However, the permanent section between the end of the near the DeFazio Bridge, the path there at UWeb, all the way down to Mill Street, that permanent infrastructure is obviously still there, and that is meant to connect up to Mill and allow people to connect to High Street when that protected bikeway facility is installed. And I think that and then on the other piece, Reed had said something about High Street in the chat, and regarding the High Street Bikeway, and that is the two-way protected bikeway from 19th to 6th. From 6th to 4th, there will be parking protected bike lanes. From 19th to 6th, there will be a two-way protected bikeway in the current design and plan. And so I think that's it for Dan Wilson's. And then for the other Dan's comments, I think it'd be helpful. Doesn't look like he's still there, but it'd be great to get that information from him in an email to see what information he would like to have around the 13th Avenue Protected Bikeway. I think we had quite a robust process from early work with the University of Oregon students all the way through a whole city process to install that two-way protected bikeway. So I'd want to make sure and get him all that information. So if his contact information is available, we'll be sure to send that to him. Reed, do you have anything more on that topic?
Not really, other than protected bike lanes are in the TSP. And I would echo your sentiment that we did do a very long public process on that. And there's a lot of material still available on the website, though I haven't looked at them for a while. And maybe we should endeavor to comb through and see what's available and update accordingly.
Yeah, and just TSP is our transportation system plan. And I'm gonna hop off since we're done with comments. I do see Mary has her hand up, but I'll hand it back to Sue and Mary to facilitate the rest as I go try and fix the chat issue.
Okay, Mary.
I just wanted to let Dan, the last Dan, know that there have been comments after 13th Street has been built, and there have been, I would say other people have raised similar concerns about the fact that it is slowed down. So I want to let you know that that has been shared by other people, and we've had some discussion about that on the ATC, and I don't know that it has gone anywhere. We talked about what the goals of this street were, which was to make it really safe for people, which is sometimes in conflict with speed. So it is something that's being discussed. And I want to let you know that you're not alone in some of your frustrations about that. There's some really good things about it. And then some people think there are some things that still need to be ironed out. They would be in agreement with some of the things you said.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, then I guess we will go on to the approving. We have two sets of minutes to approve, the May and June 2022 minutes. So I guess we need to do them one at a time. I will entertain a motion to approve the May meeting summary notes. I think that's Julie muted. Moving to approve them. Anybody second?
I second.
Okay, Andrea seconded first. Was the first to second. Any comments or whatever? One thing I would just add, and I don't remember if it was on the May or June minutes, but we have two Joshes on the committee. And so it would be helpful if in the meeting notes, if they indicated which Josh was speaking. And I think Josh Mendez was indicated as not being present at a meeting, but then commented later on in the meeting. So I have to assume that he was actually at the meeting. So there might have been an error there. Anyway, so any other discussions? All who approved the meetings of May 2022, thumbs up, I guess.
And if you don't have your camera on, can you please give a verbal or chat?
I think that's unanimous from everybody I see. Okay, and now on to the June 2022 minutes. Anyone want to move to approve them?
I'll move to approve them.
Okay, Clarissa moves to approve them. Second. I'll second. What the hell? Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, thumbs up or indicate yes in some way, yes or no in some way. Any opposed? Okay, they are approved unanimously. So that brings us to the staff update and introductions. Shane or Willow, I think that's you.
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Willow to introduce herself.
It's pretty much the purpose of this agenda item is for me to introduce myself to you all, because I do not believe I've met everyone on this committee. So my name is Willow Hamilton. I'm the new community engagement coordinator for the City of Eugene Transportation Planning, and I'll also be taking over as the staff person for the Active Transportation Committee. I'm a big cyclist and person who likes to walk and person who likes to bike and take the bus. I live next to the MX station. So I feel pretty strongly about active transportation and making our community safer and more fun to ride in. I also love to garden and things like that. So yeah, it's really great to meet all of you. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, well, thank you. We're delighted to have you, Willow. And anybody have anything more to say? Okay.
I think do we have, how much time do we have for this? Where are we? Let's see, staff meeting intros. Yeah, we have a little bit of time. I think it might be helpful, just since we've been disconnected for a couple months now, and we have new staff on. It might be helpful to have everyone just give a quick introduction of yourselves, and maybe just any kind of little blurb you want to share about either how long you've been with ATC or sort of your focus of interest or something, some tidbit. Alan, you got your hand up first, so you can.
Well, I had my hand up because I was hoping that Willow might talk a little bit about what kind of community engagement you might be involved with, so we know where we might find you or what you might be doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've only been in this position for like 3 weeks so far, so I'm not totally keyed into everything I'll be doing with the City of Eugene Transportation Planning, but you'll see me out a lot doing community engagement for the various projects that we'll be working on. Coming up, Logan, who's the Vision Zero coordinator planner, and I are going to be over at Hunsicker Lane working on that project, doing some tabling. So that's one thing that I know I'm going to be doing. I'll also be working with Rob and Shane and our team Read to sort of, increase our community engagement and make sure we're really having robust processes similar to what we did, with 13th. So hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Okay, thanks. I'm looking forward to seeing you out in the community.
Yeah.
And I'll just continue on from here, I guess, since everyone's been asked to say a few words. My name's Alan, and I have been on the ATC for many years now, I think 8 years now. And I'm very passionate about getting our network connected, particularly the key missing connections. So that's others. Maybe I should just call on someone else. How about Clarissa?
Hi, I'm Clarissa. I'm a sophomore at the University of Oregon studying 3PM. And I just got back from a crazy bike studying trip that was super great. So I'm excited about re-looking at Eugene with that light.
Okay.
I can call on Mary.
I've met Willow some, which has been very delightful to spend some time with Willow at the Riverfront Festival and online. So I think she's going to be a great addition. And I really enjoy just active transportation in general. I've been doing it for a long time along with my family. Would love to see more people do it. And I think it's great that we have a community who supports it and a staff who supports it as well. Welcome, Willow. So happy you're here.
Want to call on somebody, Mary?
How about Sue? You're the only other person I could see on here right now.
Okay. I'm Sue. I think I'm in my second year on the ATC. I've been a bicycle advocate for a long time. Walk a little bit. I live downtown. And mostly just want to see bike transportation, active transportation generally work, not just work better for those who are already doing it, but attract all the other people who easily could do it, but for some reason are not. So I'm hoping we can lure them in. Josh, you want to go next?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I didn't know if the other Josh was here. Yeah, so I'm Josh Mendez. I'm a researcher at the University of Oregon. I'm in my second year of the ATC. My philosophy is basically ABC, anything but cars. So I'm here to try to help make the city better for people rolling, walking, and just make it safer for those people. So good to meet you.
Okay, you want to call on somebody?
Is the other Josh around?
I don't see him.
No.
Okay, let's see. How about Daniel?
Hey, I'm Daniel Takamori. I joined the ATC earlier this year. I grew up in Corvallis. I work in free software and ethical technology. I have chosen not to get a license, so I've continued to do that for the 17 or 18 years that I could have. So I like to bike and walk, and I'm excited to make Eugene a more walkable and bikeable place. So let's see who else. I think Julie.
Hi, Willow. Pleased to meet you. I'm Julie Daniel. I've been on the committee, I think, 3 or 2.5 years. This is my 3rd year. I guess I'm really interested in the intersection between social justice and environment as it relates to active transportation. And I mostly bike, but I also walk. And lately I've been using the bus and I drive a car. So I use all of them. And I guess I'm most interested in helping have our youth get to school by any means apart from their parents' SUVs. Oh, and I call on Andrea. I think you're the only one left. Andrea, are you here?
Yeah, hey, I'm Andrea, and I think this is my 3rd year on ATC. And I'm really interested in making Eugene better for walking and biking. And I mean, I lived someplace where it was a lot of a car-driven society. So I really wanted to live someplace where, I could really get out of my car. And I just got an e-bike this summer. So that's been awesome. And I've totally given up the car. It's like, I just go everywhere on my bike and it's fantastic, but it's also every once in a while a little harrowing. So I'm learning a lot about what other people go through with bike infrastructure. So anyway, and welcome. Great to have you.
Okay, I think that's all the ATC members. And I presume Willa knows all the staff members.
Yeah, I already know the staff, but thanks everybody for your introductions. It was really good to meet you.
Okay, thanks. So in the interest of time, I think we will go ahead to Sidewalks 102. And it looks like that starts with Rob Itterfeld and staff.
Great, thank you. And Eric Johnson is here. He's our surface maintenance manager. He's been with the city for a long time, and I'm just here to really introduce Eric and then be part of the conversation afterwards. So Eric's gonna, I think several years ago, Eric was at an ATC meeting and provided an overview of our sidewalk maintenance program, but it's been a while, and I'm gonna guess that most of the ATC has turned over since then. So it seemed like a good time to bring Eric back, given some of our recent conversations about sidewalks. And I think there's general agreement that there's a need to focus in Eugene on both sidewalk infill and sidewalk repair. And so Eric is the person who oversees the sidewalk repair program. So he'll tell you how it works and maybe even about some potential future changes and maybe, and also like how could we grow the program. Eric may have some ideas about that. So I'm going to hand it over to Eric.
And I would also like to say, we do have a draft letter that I'd like for us to have some time to talk about too concerning sidewalk improvements. So, okay. Thank you, Eric.
Okay, well, I'll keep this really short. I want to introduce myself first before we get going, since everybody else did. I have been with the city for 23 years, and I've been the surface operations manager for the past 20 years. And sidewalks is just one of dozens of different programs that I oversee and my staff oversees. I primarily in the right of way I take care of. anything from road maintenance to sidewalks to snow plowing to street sweeping, homelessness in the right of way, utility permitting, utility inspections, and a wide variety of other things that happen in our right of way. So kind of gives you a perspective of what my team does. And we have about 40 employees who oversee all of that. You know, as for sidewalks, I'll give you a brief kind of a layout of what we have in the city and then some of our policies that we have in city code. You know, we have about 800 miles of sidewalks, and that's growing, you know, as we have new developments and we transfer new right of way into the city system. Out of that, you know, most of it is maintained under city code by property owners or business owners. The city also, with any properties that we have, maintain our sidewalks in front of our frontage. We have a sidewalk inspector, and that sidewalk inspector, you know, is a one-person show that it basically goes out and it's complaint driven, and we'll go out and work with property owners when we find that we have sidewalk deficiencies. He also goes out and works with homeowners that want to, you know, come up with ideas on how they can improve their sidewalks. And he works with our building officials when they need help with sidewalk inspections. So we generate probably over 300 requests for service for trip hazards in the right of way on an annual basis. And every time we get one of those under code, we go out and inspect those and evaluate whether or not it is a deficiency that meets certain criteria. And most of that criteria would be under ADA codes. So does it have a slope issue? Does it have a vertical deflection issue that's greater than, say, 1/4 of an inch? If so, under code, we have to send out a notice to notify that property owner that there's a deficiency that was found, and here are some steps that you can take. Most of that language you'll find, if you're interested, and I won't go through it all, is in chapter 7, 7.375, and it kind of lays out, you know, the responsibilities of the property owners and the responsibility of the city to notify and what we can and can't do to rectify the issue and mitigate the hazard. As you know, looking at our sidewalks, there's defects everywhere. I mean, it's amazing that in 800 miles of sidewalks, there's going to be a lot of defects, and some of them, people just seem to get around, and but some of them are really bad, and when we do get calls, we try to respond, but we don't have a active program that is proactive, going out and looking at areas of town and trying to take care of a grouping of areas. It's really complaint generated at this time. So we have we have a sidewalk program where our staff and our maintenance crews, when they have available resources, and that's usually time and funding, we can go out and fix some of the sidewalk issues that occur through these notices that our sidewalk inspector sends out. So we have under code also just a fee schedule that we can charge, and our fee schedule is very competitive compared to a private contractor going out and fixing it, or even a property owner going out and fixing it. So it's a very popular program, yet because of all the other activities that we have to maintain with a small group, we're not able to always get to all the the issues that are out there. So when we're not able to do it, we don't sign into an agreement with the property owner, and the property owner either has to get a contractor themselves or repair it themselves. So it's it's a difficult one. Most of the time when our sidewalk inspector shows up and sends a letter and gets a phone call back and talks to people, they're very surprised that they're responsible for the sidewalk, and that's not only defects like trip hazards and things like that, but we've talked in the past with this group about snow removal and just basic maintenance of sidewalks, whether it's leaves and other debris in the sidewalk. That's all up to the property owner. That code is not unique to Eugene, and it's not unique to Oregon. It's throughout the country. It's pretty common to have city code that puts that responsibility and sometimes liability on the property owner. And so that's usually we're educating people on that part of it. And it's difficult for them to swallow why they have to maintain an asset of the city when, it's not really theirs. I would say that more than 90% of our sidewalk hazards that we have out there are caused by a conflict between City of Eugene street trees and infrastructure. So that becomes a really difficult issue too, because under code, urban forestry has certain steps they have to take with a tree to evaluate it and decide if a tree can stay, if it has to, or if it has to go. And while we're doing sidewalk work, if it's tree related, which it's almost always tree related, urban forestry has to do all of their work first. So it's sometimes very time consuming, could take months to just evaluate one tree. So we are working closely with Parks and Open Space, urban forestry staff on trying to, streamline that process. So just to give you a sample of the impacts to a property owner, our normal hazard, if it was just one trip hazard, could be 3 5x5 panels. So a tree lifts one panel and maybe 2 or 3 panels. And to mitigate that and bring it back to ADA standards, it could take 3 panel removals to bring that back down. So we have a running slope that meets standard and a side slope that meets the standards. And that typical cost to a property owner would be, if we do it, would be, in that, probably $1,015 or so. We also, if it's related with a street tree, we provide a one-time repair if it's related to the street tree. So if the tree lifts up the panel again, we'll come in and fix it for free. If you qualify for our low income subsidy program, and this is a new program that we established in the last year, we will cover the first $1,000 of any repair. So we're using a mean tested qualification program for people to verify that they meet certain guidelines. And it's similar to what like a public utility might use for a low income subsidy program. So we're looking at it from there too, that we'll try to help people out. But if that same repair was done by a private contractor right now, we've heard from customers that it could be upwards to $4,000 or $5,000 to have that same repair done. And then there's no warranty if the street tree raises the panel again. So our program's really popular, and it's really hard to get contractors to come out and work work with people on that because the jobs are so small that we're hearing that it's difficult to get a contractor to come in. So so we bring in a revenue, we generate, on a typical year right now, we can generate probably $70,000 of revenue through our program, and that that covers a small part of what we do. In 2019, we were provided one-time money to run a dedicated crew year-round to help facilitate some of the hazards we had out there, and we were able to, over a course of 2 years, we were averaging about $160,000 revenue. So the work's out there, people are willing to pay for it, but we just don't have the staff right now to keep up with all the issues that are out there. Outside of that, I think if people have questions that they have for me, it might be the best way. I think I covered most of the things here, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I think a lot of us are we understand everything you've said, and yet it's frustrating to hear that if you're really considering walking to be a mode of transportation, it just seems inadequate. Julie?
Thank you, Eric. I must say you have a very frustrating job when it comes to sidewalks. That sounds extremely difficult. One thing I wondered was, when you buy a home, there's a home inspection, and you are told what kinds of issues might come up with your home, and you can get a warranty that covers, issues that would come up that, weren't inspected. Has there been any discussion as to including sidewalks? Since the homeowner is apparently responsible, then it would be reasonable that came up at the time of purchase, so that when you bought a home, you might know what was going on, and the previous, you could get the price reduced based on the previous homeowner having to pay it. But is there any talk about that? Because it just seems ridiculous that somebody assumes an asset and has no idea that they've assumed a liability at the same time without any notification.
Right. Yeah. We've had discussions internally about that. I know some cities require inspection reports for like lateral sewer lines before you purchase it. But sidewalks haven't been one of the inspections that I know that homeowners or home inspectors are doing. They may be, but I don't think there's a requirement that they do that. But we've talked about, I think a lot of people don't know what they're getting into when they purchase their home. And I owned a home in Eugene, and until I started working with the city of Eugene, I didn't realize that myself until I needed to do something with my sidewalk. So, and it is that's a good point that you had, that, is that something that could be discussed? I don't know who starts that conversation. But good point.
Julie, is your hand up again or still?
It's up again. I have more questions. Another issue that came up personally on my own house is I've lived in my house for 25 years. About several years ago, there was a piece of major construction, a piece of, actually it was a religious institution built, a block up, a block and a half up, and it changed the drainage of the neighborhood. And now I have water coming across my sidewalk. And in investigating this, thinking, oh my gosh, it's a leak from me, it's my problem, it's a huge hazard because it makes a slimy, slippery thing that small children and old people can fall on. But it has nothing to do with me, and it was caused by a previous, a previous piece of construction where you're changing the drainage patterns on a slope. So how does the city, how does that figure in? Is if there was a repair, if there's an accident and I'm held liable, where does that liability go? This is a very complicated and difficult issue.
Yeah, I think that's, we do get those complaints quite often, and, the city of Eugene, you can go pretty much anywhere, and especially in the South Hills and the university area, and find a lot of springs, and they constantly pop up. Where you have one year, it's not there the next. And it is a major complaint that we get. The best thing I would say in that case is to really contact the maintenance division. And, we have staff that can go out and at least take a look at it and get a better understanding of what's going on, because there's so many different scenarios. And, you might think that it's and I'm not saying it isn't, but, when somebody does something uphill from you, sometimes it's really hard to prove that they caused something versus it's just a natural spring. So we'd have to really look at each situation, but feel free to, send in a request, to Public Works Maintenance, and somebody can at least take a look at it. But yes, it does become your responsibility, once again, for that slimy green stuff going across the sidewalk. So,
Okay, Alan has his hand up. I also, we're running short of time. I did want to have us discuss this letter about sidewalk repair. And I would preface it with saying that, as Eric said, this method of funding sidewalks is very common across the country, but many communities are finding that it's just not getting the job done. And so the letter is just a statement that we need a better way to fix sidewalks, and some suggestions of how other communities have approached it. Alan?
Well, that's actually a segue, Sue, because I just wanted to ask Eric, you've worked in municipal government for a long time. I imagine you've been to conferences and gone to other cities where sidewalks are maybe better maintained. And I'm wondering what you've learned from other communities, or what ideas you have that you think might help us achieve a better outcome in Eugene.
Yeah, I think Eugene's, in some ways, I don't know if it's, if you go to certain parts of the country, we're unique with the amount of street trees that we have. I think we have an inventory of over 100,000 street trees, and they're very mature. They're people of Eugene, since I've been here, are very passionate about their trees, and we have, really good, guidelines about what we can do, which becomes a hamper for fixing, the sidewalks. Where other communities, and I'm not saying everyone, but, there are other communities where, it's dealt with differently, tree issues. So, I would say that, we don't have a dedicated sustainable funding for dealing with the issue at hand. We have it, with our road fund, we do set aside money and time to address what we can. We don't turn our back to it. We respond to emergencies, but we don't have that dedicated, ongoing, sustainable funding. The real thing we need is sidewalks. The sidewalk part of it is not that difficult for us to fix. It's working in concert with urban forestry and all the issues, and that becomes a really time-consuming, expensive process, because an average trip hazard, if it's tree related, could cost up to $2,000 just on the urban forestry side, let alone, another, $1,500 or so on the sidewalk side. So urban forestry has about $75,000 this fiscal year to deal with sidewalk or street tree infrastructure issues. And that's like doing 50, on average, that would be like hitting 50 sites in the next year. And there's way more issues out there than $75,000 worth of urban forestry money. So they need extra funding and we need extra funding. So, but we spend a lot of time looking and researching and trying to do that, come up with ideas where we work really closely with urban forestry. So we're trying to streamline it. So I don't know if that helps or anything, but I would just say that people are very protective of the street trees, and we have to, sidewalks and street trees have to work in the same footprint, and it's a really difficult one for us.
Okay, we're over time on this and we haven't even looked at the letter. I guess what's your pleasure? Is anybody interested in making a motion to approve the letter, or do we need to? I'd rather not push it to another meeting, but we may need to if people have comments or disagreements or whatever about it. Mary?
I'd make a motion to approve the letter, but I do think we need to put it back on the agenda either for a retreat or a future discussion, because I think it's bigger, and I'd also like to soon make a motion. I'm not sure about point of order that I know that Rob said, I think last time we met, that this had been, I think in his words, it's been a neglected issue, and they don't have enough staffing perhaps. And I think he suggested, I'm not sure how real this was at the time, but I think he said maybe he would consider putting extra staffing to it. And I think it would be, a recommendation that we ask him to consider that. So I hand it back to you, but I think we should at least try to get the the letter passed if we can, and then put it back on the agenda for future.
And just briefly, I think when I said neglected issue, I was more talking about sidewalk infill, because that's probably lagged more even so than sidewalk repair. And really, we've mostly just done sidewalk infill through kind of one-off grants in recent history.
Okay, is there a second to the motion to approve?
I second it.
Okay, first, is there discussion? I'm hoping you've read it.
I'll second it.
I think that was Alan seconded. Any discussion? Are you ready to vote on it? All those in favor of approving the letter, thumbs up, I guess.
And again, if we can't see your thumbs, please put it in the chat or verbally.
Okay, I
Josh.
see 2, 3, 4, 5. Josh, this is Josh.
Yeah, we don't need numbers necessarily, just consensus. And making note if there's any thumbs sideways or thumbs down.
Okay, I guess it's approved. I don't see Josh's vote, but as long as he's not opposed, we're good, right?
Yep.
Okay, and yeah, as Mary indicated, at a future meeting or at a retreat, we can discuss where we go with this. But the letter is approved. So thank you, Eric. And it's obviously a bigger discussion. I have a feeling you'll be seeing more of us in the future, hearing from us.
Yeah, great. No, anytime. I'd like to just clarify one thing, since I put out some numbers out there. Our sidewalk for that example I gave you is closer to $1,600 versus the $1,000 that I said, because we do add a $600 one-time mobilization fee. So I just wanted to make sure I got that out there before somebody calls up and says, "Oh, you told me 1,000." So.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you too. Okay, that takes us to the bond measure proposal. And I guess that's you, Rob.
Yeah, just one last thing on sidewalks is that I think our urban foresters, kind of adding to what Alan just said in the chat, they've gotten better at what kinds of trees we plant. And so the newer trees are less likely to heave sidewalks than the trees we planted in the past. For example, sweet gums, I would say, are notorious for heaving sidewalks because of the nature of their root systems. So let's talk about the bond measure. I am joined here by Brian Richardson, who's the Public Affairs Manager for Public Works. There he is. And we are going to talk about the street bond measure that the City Council recently voted to put on the ballot for this November. And I want to start off by saying that as staff and also as members of the ATC, we are not allowed to advocate for or against the bond measure in our official roles. So my role as a staff person for the city on work time, or you identifying yourself as an ATC member, we cannot do legally, we cannot advocate for or against the bond measure. On your own time, you're welcome to advocate for, in any way about the bond measure, as long as you don't identify as being a member of the ATC. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So next I'm going to talk about what the City Council voted to put on the ballot for November.
Hey Rob, I'd like to clarify that. If I, let's say, speak before a city council and say, I am a member of the ATC, but I am not speaking on behalf or as a member of the ATC, is that appropriate?
I'm going to let Brian answer that.
Need to really just unplug yourself from any and all and clarify that it's your personal opinion. That's the key in all of this, and make sure that it has nothing to do with your connection in with either the ATC and or street repair review panel. So any and all of those things, any capacity that has to do with the city, we can't make that connection. And then just piggybacking off one of Rob's things that he said, whether it's advocating for or against. So either one of those scenarios, it doesn't really matter in connection with the city at all. It can't either be one way or the other.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Okay, so what the City Council voted to put on the ballot is a 5-year, $61.2 million general obligation bond measure. It would keep the tax rate the same as the current bond measure. So people's taxes would stay the same, setting aside the issue of like the value of their house and not appraised, what's the right word, Brian? Assessed value of their house. And they increased the amount of funding that would be set aside for active transportation projects. So I'm going to explain what they voted on in that regard. They voted to set aside $15 million over the 5 years of the bond measure for walking, biking, safety, and street tree projects. And they voted to put them in certain funding amounts. So it was $5 million for walking projects, $3 million for bicycling, $3 million for safety, $2 million for street trees, and then an additional $2 million that would be more flexible to take advantage of opportunities and leverage other funds. There's obviously like overlap between some of these categories because a shared use path could have walking and biking benefits. There's safety projects that could also have walking and biking benefits. So that'll be sorted out. The City Council also voted that they will approve the list of walking, biking, safety, and street tree projects. That's a change because in the past, they left it to the staff and the Active Transportation Committee to determine how the funds got programmed. So they need to approve the list by November 1st of 2023. So our team is going to be working on coming up with what that process would look like. We probably won't start the public process until after the election to see if the bond measure passes or not, but we want to be ready to do that, to do the public engagement. And so we'll probably be doing things to get ready for that. I'll probably talk offline with Brian about whether we could even have an ATC conversation about what that would look like. And if you have, and then we can let you know, because we definitely wouldn't want to engage the ATC in that community, in and what the community engagement process looks like. We want to get your feedback. But we want to have a robust community engagement process. And I think that's what the council is expecting us to do. And we definitely want there to be a strong equity component to it. One of the things we're looking at is potentially trying to update the pedestrian and bicycle component of the transportation system plan as part of this process, because we've already either constructed or have funded, so have them like in the development process, a lot of the major projects in the TSP. And so we thought that could be a good opportunity to engage folks. But I also want to point out that a lot of different kinds of walking, biking, and safety projects are not currently, those project types are not in the TSP. Some of them probably wouldn't be in the TSP in the future, but others could be. Like we could change the nature of some of the project types in the TSP. So for example, infrastructure rehabilitation projects are not typically in the TSP. We might have them in the TSP from like a programmatic perspective, but we don't identify like what shared use paths are going to get repaved or rehabilitated, or what path lighting needs to be rehabilitated. But those would be eligible expenses under the bond measure. In the current TSP, we don't, for like places where we're going to like redesign a street to make it more walkable, we don't typically identify those in the TSP. Some we do, but for the most part we don't, especially if they're not major streets. So we might want to look at where are there places where maybe the sidewalk is narrow or right up against traffic, where we might want to come in at some point and make a change. So for one, as an example, one area where we're looking at doing that now is on Broadway between like Mill and Hilliard. We're looking at repurposing one of the vehicle lanes to create a wider sidewalk with setback sidewalk with street trees. We don't typically have projects like that in the TSP. Pedestrian crossings also are another kind of project that we don't typically identify in the TSP because they're small, but we might want to identify corridors or different streets where we'd want to see more places where people can safely cross the street, and then set a funding amount aside for that. Street trees, they're likely to be more programmatic and not identifying like the individual trees or the individual streets, but it may take a more programmatic approach. And there may be some opportunities to have the street trees sync up with some of the other kinds of projects like the Broadway project that I just described. I also think that sidewalk repair is also a possible expenditure for the bond measure. It's something we can look at because we know that's a funding concern that was raised by Eric. And the street trees, I think the way the street tree language is written, it could also apply to addressing street tree problems and not just new street trees. So there may be a possibility that some of the issues that Eric raised around street tree complications with sidewalks could be part of this too. But ultimately, it'll be up to the city council to approve. Brian, anything you want to add? I have awful timing. I'm trying to ask, he's got another Steve's coming. So why don't you think about if you have any questions or comments, and then I'll ask Brian if is there anything you want to add or clarify?
No, I don't think, and one thing I can do is throw in a link to the elections page as well, which talks a little bit about this. I just get a little bit reluctant trying to dive too much into this without having approved language from the Secretary of State's office as well. But I think that was good, Rob.
You know, one last thing I'll say before questions is like, I think the public process we're going to have will also create opportunities to, identify needs that we could address through other funding mechanisms too. The other thing is I think Logan on our team presented our prioritization matrix to you before, and we definitely have an interest in using sort of an objective analytical tool to help us prioritize projects. So that's something else that you'll probably see more of. And so Reed is actually working with some other folks in our team to develop that process, and he's here tonight too if any questions or comments come up. And I'll stop there.
I just have one question on my own. Rob, do you know how you would deal with the fact that, often bond measure money is used as matching grants to, matching funds to get a grant or something. So obviously you wouldn't know, that would be very difficult to know in advance, but would city council have to approve you're going out to try to get a grant, or how would you handle that? I mean,
I think part of the idea is that $2 million, I'm sorry, was that what you were saying?
We'd like to get a multiplier effect,
right.
by seeking grants, but it sounds that might be difficult if the city council has to approve it ahead of time.
Right. A couple of things. One is that I think that's part of the idea of keeping $2 million unprogrammed, that would be set aside for those kinds of opportunities. And also the city council would have the ability to amend the project list too.
Daniel?
Yeah, just a question about that analytical process. Are you looking at just a like quantitative approach, or are you going to be talking to any like social scientists or people like that for developing those kind of metrics?
That's a good question. Were you on the ATC when we had the presentation? I mean, we can schedule a time for folks that missed that. We have not engaged social scientists in that, and it is a very quantitative approach. So if you have suggestions for how to integrate a qualitative approach with that, we can talk about that. I'd be interested in having that conversation. So maybe that's an offline thing. It could also be like if there could be a working group that we connect with on that for Synergy.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, any other discussion, questions, whatever? So again, just to remind you what Rob said at the very beginning, we are not, as ATC members, allowed to, we can answer factual questions about the bond measure to the extent that we know the answers, but we're not allowed to speak in favor or against it as ATC members. So. Okay, thank you, Rob. That's helpful, and I guess I'm not allowed to say that I hope the bond measure passes.
Sure. And like I said, we'll look into whether we can come back to talk about what that public process looks like in advance of the election, or whether we need to wait till after. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So that takes us to the Pearl Street repaving and bike lane options. So it looks like that's Reed.
Yeah. So there is a paving project downtown Eugene next year, 2023, on Oak Street and on Pearl Street. Today, I want to talk about Pearl Street because it contains a bike lane. For folks who remember, back during the, starting in 2019, we did a process called Central Eugene in Motion, which looked at a couple active transportation corridors, including Willamette Street. And the result of that was that we two-wayed the remaining one-way section of Willamette Street between 20th and 18th. Another segment was 8th Avenue, and we've begun plans to develop protected bike lanes for 8th Avenue downtown. And then the last corridor was High Street or High Pearl, and connecting the Amazon path to the Willamette Riverbank and the Riverbank Path system. And that included an analysis or a look at and a conversation with the public about both Pearl Street and High Street. What we decided to do is to build a two-way protected bikeway on High Street. And we are at the point where we are going to be repaving Pearl Street, as I mentioned, next year, which has a southbound bike lane. Now, the project on High Street, which we're hopeful will still begin this year, will also have a southbound bike lane as well as a northbound bike lane. And so 330 feet away from Pearl Street, there will also be a redundant lane for bicycle travel. And those will be protected lanes. What we're trying to ascertain at this point is what features of Pearl Street should be retained and what should be added, if anything. For example, an addition could be a curb extension across Pearl Street. And we're definitely looking at that near Safeway at 17th, where we would want an enhanced pedestrian crossing of some sort, but those sorts of projects. And I just wanted to bring up the bike lane specifically because during the Central Eugene in Motion process, we talked about the possibility that the bike lane on Pearl Street could disappear with a project. Well, we have a project next year. And so what I'm here to do is to sort of take the room's temperature on the Pearl Street bike lane. And I want to just preface that with, it probably won't go back as is. There are 50% more crashes on Pearl Street than there are on High Street. We would need to do some kind of an intervention where those crashes are most severe. I'm not entirely sure what those will look like. In the past, I thought it might be a bend out bike lane, which we did on Willamette Street at both 20th and 19th. And I get a lot of emails and calls about that people don't like them. So let's talk about Pearl Street. What are people thinking?
Well, if no one else is going to jump in, I absolutely advocate keeping a bike lane on Pearl Street. I ride it several times a day. I recognize that some people don't feel comfortable on it, or some times of day don't feel comfortable. But we don't, we don't take away a street for cars just because there's another one nearby. And some people may choose not to drive on a given street. That's their option. Some people may choose not to bike on a given street. That's their option too. But I think one of the things we've seen with 13th Avenue is that experienced bicyclists, for the most part, stay away from it. And they have options. They have other options. So that kind of works there. If you take away Pearl Street, there really aren't any other options. And I think it would, I think it would be a real detriment to people who are currently riding bikes. Josh, I think you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Sue, and thanks, Reed, for bringing this up. I guess, the reason Pearl Street is so dangerous is not because of the bike lane or the bikes, it's because of the cars. So if anything, we should remove a travel lane, a general travel lane, and extend that bike lane so it's a little bit safer for people. The bike lane is certainly very narrow, and so there's not a 3-foot law in Oregon, but you have to pass a bicyclist far enough so if the bicyclist falls over, that bicyclist doesn't get run over by a car. And as it stands right now, that's not the case. So I would advocate, if we're going to take anything away, let's take away parking on Pearl Street, or at least make Pearl Street slower, or if we do take out the bike lane, let's do what we've done on Willamette Street, where there is sort of there's a clear sign that says bicyclists can take the full lane on one side. If you're in a car, you have turn signals, you can move over. But I would definitely advocate keeping the bike lane, or certainly improving it.
Larissa?
Yeah, I think these are all great points. I think, for those seasoned bicyclists, this really removes that barrier that a lot of them have and the complaints they have for our protected bikeways. And also there are places on that one street that people are going to want to be able to get to. So to keep that and to keep expanding our network instead of making part of a network and then taking another part away will make our entire city more cohesive and easier to bike around. So I am a strong proponent for keeping that extra lane.
Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, I definitely think getting rid of the bike lane is not a great idea. I mean, I think people are going to ride on it anyway. I mean, they're going to try to do it even if it's not marked as a full lane. I think, because people have done it for a very long time. And I think that judging from people's reaction to 13th Street, I'm guessing a lot of people just, they'll not want to do that. They'll want to be able to flow with traffic. And I like Josh's idea of taking away a car lane, because I feel like the street is just fast. I mean, people feel like they can go really fast on it. So I think slowing it down is really the answer, because there's also pedestrians that are walking in that area that, it's dangerous for them.
Okay, Andrew. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry, I'm having connection problems. I'm on my phone now. So yeah, I just wanted to say I really advocate for keeping the Pearl lane. I think I heard this earlier, but just want to reiterate, it's really important. Like if I'm trying to access a business on Pearl, which there are a lot of businesses on Pearl and I go there pretty often, it's really important for me to have a space, even if it's not the safest space for me to get there. Because riding on Pearl without a lane would just be absolutely, it's hard to imagine how difficult that would be. Even just the half block I need to go to access a business there, Also, I think duplication is really important, and I am really appreciative for the work that city staff are doing on protected bike lanes, and I hope that the lights give more priority to cyclists than on 13th. I understand why on 13th, but one of the big takeaways from my time in the Netherlands was something they don't have a translation for it. They just called them "don't stop" routes, and they found that a lot of people appreciate that. And I hope that we can figure out the lights on high so that they're like that. But you know, Pearl, if you are pretty fast, you can get a green wave, even though I don't think it's intentioned that way. And so I would just hope that for people needing to access businesses there, and for those of us who feel more confident riding there, that we can keep that lane. I think losing it would be pretty bad for the bicycle network. Thanks.
Alan?
Yeah, I agree with what others have said. And I've got a question for you, Reed. In the past, when parking has been proposed to be removed for bike lanes, there's been an appeals process. And I'm wondering if there's a corresponding appeals process if a bike lane is proposed to be removed for either parking or automobile travel.
There is not.
I'll be right back. I'm just grabbing my shoes.
Okay, thanks.
Julie?
Nothing much to add, except that I agree with all the calls that we absolutely need to hold on to any bike lanes we possibly have. And, you know, I mean, motorists have options to drive on throughways or on side streets and drive more slowly. And so, you know, I mean, the same should be true for bikes. We should have the option to go on a slow protected lane or go faster and ride a dangerous lane if we so choose. I would make a request that if we, you know, for both of those streets, they're probably some of the most difficult streets to ride, you know, in the fall and the winter because of leaves and just junk on the road. There's just, they're not swept, you know, anything like every day, and they really are pretty bad. It'd be nice if they could get swept every day through the leaf season so that they really were navigable, because they're just a mess. Okay, thanks.
Based on everything we've heard here, is it okay to make a motion that we make a recommendation to the staff, the city staff, that they keep the bike lane on Pearl Street?
Absolutely. I will either start that or second that, whatever you need.
Okay.
Okay, I guess that's a motion made by Mary and second by Clarissa.
Yes, I want to ask everybody if we should add something to it that is, because I think it sounds like the city's looking at ways to make it safer. I see Richard's comment about slowing cars down. So, you know, we need to keep it and we need to make it better. And I don't know if that should be part of the motion or if we just want to, you know, move that we not, I guess I'm going to keep it simple, but I assume that they're going to be looking at ways to slow it down and move that we keep the bike lane on Pearl Street, that we recommend that they keep the bike lane on Pearl Street.
That work for you, Clarissa? Okay. Any more discussion?
I guess just as a point of order that we'll probably want to, rather than just, I would want to recommend that you write a letter. Like, you know, you can make this motion and pass it, but my recommendation would be to also either make another motion or say something that gives us a little bit more detail about what your hopes and interests are. And I think this is good for now, but maybe put together a letter and approve that in the next meeting or not, but have that just a little bit more extensive.
Okay, yeah, we could assign it to that topic to one of the committees, probably to work up a draft to just be considered the next meeting. Okay, if there's no more discussion, all those in favor, raise your thumbs.
And Justin, for those not on video, you can do it in the chat. Yes, Josh.
That's unanimous once we hear from Justin. Okay. Okay, what do we want to assign that to a committee to work on that? Could be infrastructure, could be communications. What's your pleasure?
Communications.
Okay.
And Daniel's on that and he's got some ideas too.
Okay.
I mean, if
Okay.
everybody's okay with that, I think we could.
Okay, the communications committee will work on a draft to be considered at the next meeting. Okay, that brings us almost on time. How about that? To the World Athletic Championships and Riverfront Festival.
Great. Yeah, this is just sort of a general check-in, and I feel wanted to double check. Willow, did we add something else in there too, or was this just on Oregon 22 and Riverfront Festival?
This is just on Oregon 22 and
Okay.
Riverfront Festival and
Right.
reflections or lessons learned.
Yeah.
That
Great.
anyone wants to bring forward.
Yeah. So I'll just preface this by saying we did it. We hosted a world-class event, and the world did not come crashing down on our transportation world. And, you know, we definitely heard from a lot of people that were like, oh, it wasn't such a big deal. You know, why did, you know, we make such a big deal of this? There wasn't all this congestion. And, you know, I like to remind people that we, because we planned for it and we prepared for it. And I want to give a special shout out to Cass and Justin and the Cascadia Mobility team for all the work that they did, for Andrew Martin and LTD and all of that team for all they did to make all the different things about shuttles and bike parking and access to bike share, and, you know, all of the shuttles and pieces that fit into this puzzle that made it so that it did feel like smooth operations for the thousands of people that came to Eugene, either visiting or went to the event. So from our perspective, that was a success. We know that there were things that we did that worked really well and things that we would want to change. It will probably be a while before we host another event like that. But I think that there are other things that are coming, you know, up in years ahead that will be somewhat similar. We know we're going to host other track and field events, whether it's trials or whatnot. We know that there are other big events that are currently happening that we could apply practices such as duck football games to. So, you know, I would love to hear people's feedback on what worked well that you saw around transportation and what could be improved. You know, everything from what happened at Hayward Field, the wayfinding in between, what happened at the Riverfront Festival, the Bike Ambassador program that we implemented for the first time, and which I'll talk about some other time as we grow that program, and then bike share and bike valet and those pieces. We'd just love to hear folks' input and feedbacks and thoughts on those.
Justin, did you want to speak on anything to from the standpoint of Cascadia Mobility? I saw you posted the 9,465 trips were made. Do you have anything else to say with regard to evaluation of it, lessons learned, whatever, from the point of Cascadia Mobility?
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Great, awesome. Yeah, it was an awesome event. I mean, it was a lot of work. Just to be honest, from before, I mean, it was a lot of planning beforehand. I think one of the biggest things for us as Cascadia Mobility was volunteers. We just didn't have enough volunteers. I think I put in just by myself, like a little over 80 hours those 10 days, and you know, definitely working more than 40 the weeks before. But I know there was a struggle for everybody, even for Cass, for the City of Eugene, just everybody else. I just felt like there wasn't enough like maybe coordination with Oregon 22, because they were definitely needing a lot of volunteers and they were definitely, you know, on top of it as well as us. So I think that was just like my main piece, was like getting enough staff or just enough people to cover. So I also wanted to give a shout out to, I know like see Mary is there, Sue was there, a lot of the folks from ATC helped with, you know, helping cover the bike share and as well as for the City of Eugene. So thank you so much for that. bike share trips were definitely very high. As I said, like almost 10,000 those 10 days. Those orange bikes were seen by athletes, were seen by the media. We saw bike share on the international stage of like on TV on Peacock. It was really great to have a presence there. Cascade Mobility in general with Bike Ballet. We had so many bikes. I don't have the numbers. I think Shane has the numbers in front of him, but we had so many people come in and just so grateful to have a place to ride to for the Eugene River Film Festival and leave their bike and feel secure and actually have a face to that. So yeah, we had an amazing time. We worked really hard, but we also had an amazing time. That's all I got to say at this point.
Anybody else? Yeah, Mary.
I hate to put Willow on the spot, but when we talked about whether to have this as an agenda item, if it had application to, other things that we do, or if it was a sort of a one-off and we don't even really need to discuss it. And you said something I thought was helpful in terms of, do you remember what you said and how it applies? I mean, Shane said, yes, there'll be other big events, but you said something like, how do we get folks to, bike places? You said something, can you remember?
I think it was something similar to what Shane was mentioning just about the messaging that we made around the festival, about how we were expecting there to be a lot of people, a lot of traffic. It might be a big headache if you drive, so you should try a different mode. And I think that messaging ended up being really effective because we talked to a lot of people who were like, I'm trying bike share for the first time, or I'm out biking for the first time in 10 years or something like that, who were Eugene locals. And I think it was just that messaging that kind of encouraged them to get on their bike, and maybe bringing that messaging forward for like what Shane mentioned, like a duck game or something, where like, we know it's a mess in town when that happens, like just like the track thing, like get your bike out or take a walk or use LTV or something like that. So that was one takeaway I had.
Okay, and not just big events, but like anything,
right,
yes,
like the Saturday market or something.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Willow.
Yeah, Daniel. I think you're muted, Daniel.
It's not on mute, but he might have some microphone issue.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit of static, but
we can hear you.
okay.
Hold on. Okay. Yeah, I got to meet Shane and Rob in person, so that was really cool. Kind of pandemic stuff. We take what we can get. I have absolutely loved all of the arrows on the pathways to get people to the riverfront. It's been really great to be able to point friends and say, hey, you can just follow those arrows and we can meet up along the way, or here's some destination spots you can follow to get there. The new riverfront is great. And so I think that like overall, I felt really good about seeing people around on bikes and being able to get more people to meet up and do more casual rides. I think that's been really beneficial to more casual bicyclists. So that's been super awesome. Would love to see more of that. I think that just the visual indicator feels so much better than the Sharrows to bikers. It's like, maybe it's just my own, it's like a wink and a nod to bicyclists of like, hey, we care about you. But it has definitely made me feel safer and feel more ready to like ask my friends that are more amateur bikers to come along on rides and stuff. I dodged Autzen quite, like I didn't try to go over there during the time. I was just walking over there, but the traffic didn't seem too bad. So I think that I would just like to reiterate that I agree with Shane that like nothing went wrong because it was planned for, not that nothing was done. And I think I really appreciated all of that effort that was taken there. So just wanted to give my props to the people who organized for that.
Okay, thanks. And I see a couple comments in the chat about the bike ambassadors. And I would agree with what Richard comments, that it'd be nice, I think, if the bike ambassadors were around all the time. We didn't actually have a lot of interactions with folks, mostly because I think we had arrows, people knew more or less where they were trying to go. But I think also having them a little easier to identify might have helped. Some sort of uniform or something to make the bike ambassadors more readily available, or a little more clearly defined role. But yeah, as Shane indicates, that's sort of a work in progress. So I think it was great PR. I mean, people appreciated noticing that, knowing that, hey, there's somebody there trying to make it all work. That's very friendly. So in that respect, it worked, even if we didn't actually do very much, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, we had bike ambassadors that had, we did have vests with the bike ambassador symbol on the back, and then because someone else did, I think it was Richard who first put on a sign, we made up some signs that said info and had some QR code info on it as well to sort of let people know. But I think the uniform idea is great. The bike ambassador piece was definitely something we were trying out, and I think it worked really well, especially at the very beginning. The first bike ambassadors that went out seemed to have the most questions those first couple days, until people figured out, like, oh, this is where I'm staying, this is where I'm going. Now I can just kind of go back and forth, and that's definitely something we saw sort of, peter off at the end of needing to interact with people as much. So that was a good lesson learned. But I doubt we'll have many 10-day festivals again. But those having them out there, I think, was really helpful. Even if we didn't reach hundreds of people, the few we did meet were kind of in need of assistance, and it was good to be able to offer those resources to people.
Okay. Any more comments? Well, congratulations, Dawn. I think it was a job very well done. Everybody I've talked to said, God, I was amazed. It's like I was expecting this horrible traffic chaos, and everything went smoothly. So that's it was good planning and well executed. So thank you. I think that brings us to let's see, 7 o'clock. Project updates, info share on a bunch of different topics. E-scooters, bike share, Europe trip, bike parking, think bike workshop. So take it away, Shane or Willow or somebody, I presume.
Yeah, can you I'll talk about scooters really quick, and then if you can put in the chat what those other pieces are, might help me flow into the other pieces that I need to give updates on it or point to other folks for that. And I know Justin's at an event, so might not be able to give the bike share update right now, so I'll fill in where I can. 1 second here.
I do think Justin more or less shared the bike share update. I think this was kind of how bike share did during the World Trek championships, and we had really high ridership and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so for an update on e-scooters, so last you heard a couple months ago, I think you knew that we had an approved permit applicant in Bird, and that they were in the process of getting their finalized permit, and they are still in that process, and it includes a need to have an agreement with the University of Oregon and with Cascadia Mobility, and they the local operator of bike share, and they do have that agreement with the University of Oregon, but they are still working on the agreement with Cascadia Mobility, and so there's some discussions going on around insurance and sort of pricing structure and sort of how it's going to happen. We're asking for something that other communities are not. We're also providing something that other communities are not, and that is one permit for an operator versus 2 or 3 or 6 scooter operators in a community. There are some places where they have one scooter operator, but it's not as common, and that exclusivity is, I think, a bonus for us, but it's also, it gives us some leverage in our negotiations and work with them. And we've made it abundantly clear to them that it's really important to us that they work with our local bike share operator, as that's a key piece of our shared micromobility operations, is that we want bike share and scooter share to work together. And so we will be, we've heard from them sort of where their sticking points are and where the negotiations are going, and they're moving ahead in a positive direction. We're just gonna bring them all together in the next couple weeks to hopefully get to a final point of agreement. They would really like to see launch in the fall. I think that's going to be difficult for Cascadia Mobility to ramp up operations in time to do that. If they can't, then we would be looking at a spring launch because we don't want to launch in the winter. So that's where we're at right now. Yeah, I don't think there's any other pieces. I know there's some things that with bike share that are upcoming. If you haven't had a chance, one of the other big updates that happened along with Oregon 22 and that timeframe was installation of the new controllers. If you haven't ridden bike share in a while and you're used to the old button push operations, it is now QR code app access, super easy, super fast, much better. So I encourage you to get out and try the new controllers if you haven't used bike share in a while. It's really a great upgrade. And again, just major props to the operation team at Cascadia Mobility for running our bike share system in just such a terrific manner. They had an issue with bottom brackets right before trial or the championships as well, and they just fixed it before it became a safety hazard, and they just do smash up work. Yeah, they're really rocking it. And there's some other things on the horizon that we're working with them on as far as trying to lower the age limit and increase the access plan access. And Justin's doing some amazing work in that front too. So definitely keep your eyes on InMotion and their newsletter for updates. And then around the Europe trip. So for those who don't know, 3 of us on the call today went to Denmark and a couple others to the Netherlands also for a scan design fellowship and a U of O bike transportation class work. So there were, let's say 19, is that right, Clarissa, that we had 19 students?
There were 17 students,
17
5
students.
professionals, and then 2 professors.
Yeah. So the 17 students, 5 professionals, and 2 professors, and we were based out of Copenhagen for a while, and then went around to other cities to see what they were doing related to bikes and transportation. And then the class then moved on, but the professionals did not, even though some joined for part of the Netherlands portion as well. So a lot of incredible information was shared and gathered, and much too much to even touch on this evening. But we just want to highlight that all of us are committed to sharing that information, and that we'll be doing presentations, and especially the professionals. It was a requirement of our work that we present, and we are looking at what that looks like and what kind of community events we can do and how best to share. We also have had professionals in the past from the community who have gone, including Reed and Rob. And so we'd like to gather sort of not just the folks from this year, giving sort of updates of what we experienced, but also overall and how we might incorporate that common experience into affecting positive change in our community. Overall, I'll just say briefly, for myself, professionally and personally, because I was able to bring my kiddos over there to experience what cycling in another country was like. It was definitely mind-blowing and just a wonderful experience for them personally, and then me professionally, to see how the work that we're doing is applied in other places and how we might apply some of what they are doing here. Really just incredible. Andrew and Clarissa, you want to say a quick thing about that?
Yeah, I think it's super great that we're going to be doing the presentations. I'm excited, and I would love to go and visit the professionals' presentations as well. And I think something that was so mind-boggling to me while I was there was just how improved just basic quality of life things were to be able to so easily, and so comfortably get around on a bicycle. It was thoughtless. It was just like, hop on your bike and away you go. It was amazing. So I'd love to see more of that stuff here.
Yeah, it was it was definitely something else. It's not at all what I expected. You know, I'm like, oh, they just have like two-way protected cycle tracks everywhere. Not true at all. But the mental load of like how safe you feel all the time, and how connected the networks are, and you know, not having to look at a map and think about, oh, I can take this street but not that street, because you just kind of naturally flow through a network that will take you anywhere. And also, I'll just say, you know, I don't do a lot of driving, but like it seems like driving there was also really awesome, because they've shifted not that much, right? Like in most of these cities, I think the mode share was like 20% bikes. Eugene's at like 6.5%. So we actually don't need that many more people riding bikes to get a lot of the benefits. So I was like really encouraged. The big shock coming home, but really encouraged by, I think, actually, like, we're not there, but we're like not that far from a tipping point either, to get a lot of the benefits. And like I said, it's not just benefits for people biking, but there's less, I saw less car congestion in downtown Copenhagen, a city of 1 million people, than I do in downtown Eugene. So benefits for everybody, if we can get there. Excited about sharing a lot. Like I told Sue, I took 1,000 pictures, so I got some things to share.
Yeah, and so related to that, and one of the other pieces is this Think Bike workshop that we're going to be doing in September. And I don't know if Rob wants to say a quick thing about that, but my hope is to connect that work with sort of what we've learned collectively. And so maybe Rob can chime in if he's still on to say something really quick about the Think Bike.
Sure. Is my video working? Oh yeah. Okay, so Think Bike, the Dutch Cycling Embassy is a partnership between the Dutch government and businesses and other and nonprofit institutions in the Netherlands to promote biking around the world and share what they've learned. And they basically approached us because they were already planning to be in San Francisco for a Dutch trade mission. And so they were able to kind of give us a good deal where we don't have to pay for them to fly over to the United States in order to come here for a few days and just teach us about, learn about what we do here and teach us about different elements of biking in the Netherlands. I don't have the list in front of me, but some of the topics we asked them to look at are, one of the people that will likely be here is the person who recently wrote a book called Curbing Traffic, that some of you may have heard of. I'm drawing a blank on his, Chris Brunlet. He works for the Dutch Cycling Embassy. So there's sort of like managing vehicle traffic and how that relates to biking, incentives for biking, just looking at our bike network and our facilities, especially like our neighborhood greenways and our sort of neighborhood street system and how to make that work better for biking. And integrating biking with transit was the other category that we wanted them to engage us on. So it'll probably be a combination of like some public talks. There might be a film or two, some meetings with like policymakers and leadership, and some possibly some presentations that are more geared to staff. And so there'll definitely be a lot of opportunities for public engagement and likely a bike ride or two as well. So stay tuned for more information.
Okay, sounds great.
Yep, and then I think the only other piece on there was a bike parking update. Is that something, Reed? I saw you put something in there about bike parking. Do you want to say something about your note, or you want me to just cover that? It's like Reed's going to be meeting with park staff about increasing the quantity of permanent racks at the downtown riverfront. We're also looking at, he's interested in getting the park blocks upgraded. Regarding the bicycle parking code, Reed just looked at it this week for the first time since 2019, and he hopes to update it and get it back to the city attorney this month. We will still need a public hearing after that at Planning Commission, and schedules are full. He will try to get it moving again ASAP.
Yeah, with regard to that, there have been a number of comments about the farmers market and inadequate bike parking there. And I guess I would hope that it doesn't have to wait for something in the code to tell them that they have to put it in. I'm hoping that we can get that rectified sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've heard.
Great, but I think the farmer's market itself, many people go to the farmer's market, don't go to Saturday market, don't go to the rest of the park blocks. And, you know, it's a big destination. It needs much better bike parking.
Yeah, I think that's what Mary asks, is what does it mean to get the park blocks updated? I think one of the opportunities that we have is with the 8th Avenue project that is happening this fall and winter, is that we are making some changes along 8th at the park blocks. And as part of that project, we can also look at bike parking. And, you know, that's on both sides. And so that's one of the ways that we can look at getting the park blocks updated for better bike parking. And it's something that the downtown manager, Eric, has mentioned, looking at that as a whole, trying to improve all the bike parking. One of the things I'll just note real quick is that we have some horrible toaster rack bike parking that has been put out for the Saturday market on a seasonal basis. And we are looking to get that removed to put in the event bike parking that we have purchased with Cascadia Mobility. So they have a set that they use now for special events where you can place, you can request and sort of rent event parking for your event. So if you know you're going to have an event, but you don't want to have a full valet bike parking service, you can have these special racks installed temporarily that can allow people to use bike share or their personal bikes to have a safe place to lock. And we purchased a couple of those to use in the city on a rotating basis, and a couple of them will go out at Saturday market to put in there. I think one of the things to highlight with the park blocks is that there was a design process that they went through for the farmers market pavilion. And I think that, you know, the amount of space and the flexibility that they needed for the farmers market stands was one of the limiting factors of where the bike parking got pushed. And so when you go there, you kind of see it on the outskirts of the building. And so people are like, well, why isn't it right at the building where people would need it? But once it fills up with booths, there isn't space on the inside where you would think you would put bike parking. But it's still, you know, it doesn't mean that there isn't room for, you know, looking at where the bike parking is on that perimeter.
Andrew?
Yeah, I was going to say maybe it's a good future agenda item topic, but just to talk about bike parking at parks. Because I go to Alton Baker quite a bit, and there's not great bike parking there. And I have to assume many of our parks lack really good bike parking, and presumably we want people to ride there. So I don't know. I mean, that's like probably a whole topic. I'd love to hear kind of how parks approaches bike parking. And Reed talked about the bike parking code. I don't know what's in there. I can research that myself, but maybe that's a topic for us to discuss sometime. Just putting that out there, because I feel like it's not just the farmers market. It's probably a number of our parks.
Yeah, I don't know if Reed has anything to share on that piece, but yes, I think that that's definitely a part of it.
Yeah, I guess my only addition is that during the design process for the park blocks, I was given a lot of assurances that we would have an opportunity to go back through the design and add bike parking. And I'm going to cash in on those chips because they were given. And I'm just going to check in and make sure that we're faithful to that, and that it's adequate, and that it meets at least our minimums. And hopefully we can do better, because we've invested a lot of time and effort, and there's a community expectation. So we'll do what we can.
Yeah, Mary?
Yeah, there's been some discussion about the bike parking at farmers market through via BEST. And then there's been a little bit of movement just in the last couple of days for ATC to provide some leadership and, you know, taking a look at that and maybe making some recommendations. And now, based on what Reed says, is saying, you know, it's going forward, but it still seems like it might be good for us to look at it as a committee and also weigh in. So with that said, you know, I'll look and see if Reed has any further recommendations about that, but we were going to meet down there, invite people to meet on a Saturday and just take a look at it. And Anne was going to provide us with the data about where the available bike parking is based on the research that she and her students did before. And then we were going to see, you know, if we had a recommendation or a next step. So I think we're going to move ahead on that unless there's a reason not to meet and discuss that as a group. So you'll get more information about that.
Great. Okay, and then I think one other info share I just wanted to note really quick, because I know we're out of time on this topic, is that I wanted to highlight that for those who don't know, Smart Trips is going strong, and that we've had our highest response rate ever, and that we have 1,300 plus packets of information going out to people who have requested to be part of the Smart Trips program this year in Southeast Eugene. And so our highest number before was just over 1,000. And so Jeanette and the interns, Leah and Alex, are, as well as Lucy, are busy delivering packets for the Smart Trips program and are out in the community talking to people and holding events. In fact, tonight they are out there with some of the Cascadia Mobility Peace Health Rides folks at the Ems game, where they did a bike to the baseball. So just want to let you know that that is happening, and it's really exciting because that's to have the Smart Trips program back and rolling and being so successful. And a wheel bender bike rack, just to answer Duncan's question, are the similar, any kind of rack where you just put in your front wheel and you don't have a way to support the bike frame on it. So those can be on the ground or toaster style, where you just put in your front wheel, old school style.
And as far as how to get them replaced, I'm assuming many of them are on private businesses, or schools, or.
Oh, I misread that. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we don't have a program in place yet. We've replaced a lot of those at schools through the Safe Routes to School program, and my hope is that we can create a bike rack program for the city that does something similar to upgrade those. That'll be part of any future bike parking program, hopefully. All right, I'll wrap up that.
The agenda is schedule/plans.
Yeah, that's to discuss in-person meetings. So Willow and I need to meet and discuss plans for the potential of an in-person meeting, and just wanting to check in with ATC. The last time that we talked, it sounded like there was a desire to have a hybrid meeting schedule where we would meet in person with the option to meet virtually as well. And so I think there was still a question of how many would we require people to come in person. There was some concern about whether, 3 people would show up in person and then everyone else would be calling in, and was that worth the staff and the sort of logistics of having an in-person meeting, or do we want to hold sort of quarterly meetings in person and expect as many people as can make it. And we do know that we want to keep live streaming these, so wherever we are in person, we have to have the technological capability to do that.
Alan?
Yeah, I wanted to speak on behalf of one community member who doesn't have internet access, who very much wants to attend ATC meetings in person. So I don't know how many other people are out there like that, but at least this one person is very eager to attend.
Okay, and I would assume there are other community members who say, yeah, I'll go if I don't have to actually go downtown to the meeting. So I think having hybrid public participation too would be probably the best bet. So you're gonna get back to us on that, Shane, or what?
Yeah, unless I just want to see if there are more comments real quick. Mary?
Mary?
I think, again, based on what we heard when we did the survey, as I recall it, it seems like it would be a good idea to move, just try it, and try a hybrid, and maybe try it for 3 months and then see how it is. And I guess I would recommend or think it would be a good idea to encourage people to at least try to come to one of those meetings in person, one of those 3 meetings. So that would be sort of I'm not sure if I'm making it as a motion, but that would be what I think would be a good thing going forward. Just give it a try. We got to kind of get off that, go forward.
Yeah. I think the main piece for me right now is that as staff, we have to find the facility that will help facilitate that, in that, the ability for everyone to hear and be heard and see and be seen if we want to. So just creating that hybrid system is a little bit different.
Yeah,
it sounds like people are still supportive of that, and we can, as staff, come up with a potential plan.
Yeah, I think in general, having as many people in person as possible, I think it would just help with interpersonal dynamics and stuff, to be able to actually have real people there. But recognizing if there are people who literally can't get there in person, certainly virtual is better than nothing. But I would hope that people would be strongly encouraged to attend in person. Oh,
okay, thanks.
I guess that I think the next thing is subcommittee reports back, which I think can be pretty short, because I don't think most of the subcommittees met in the last month. I think the infrastructure committee did meet. I was out of town personally, but I think Alan, were you there? Was there a infrastructure committee meeting?
We did have a meeting, and I believe we have some notes from that. I'm not prepared to summarize them, but I might be able to find them in a second. If someone else who is part of that has them available or can recall, they can go ahead. See if I can find those.
I think I found them, Alan.
Okay.
So we talked about a couple of things. Let's see here. We talked about potentially doing some more walkthroughs on some infrastructure that has been installed recently. And so we talked about 13th Ave, kind of summarizing our findings there, Beaver Hunsaker, and eventually we want to do that for Pearl and High Streets whenever changes are made to those. We talked about maybe getting an update on Franklin Boulevard from staff, because it's been a while, and I guess design work is happening, and wanted to talk about the workshop that Rob talked about earlier. So that was talked about, so already taken care of. Those are, I think, the highlights, if I'm reading this right.
One thing I see on those notes is also review the closure plan, the process for the river path. Just the fact that that riverfront path was closed for several years, and how did that happen, and how can we avoid that in the future? Andrea, do you have something more?
Yeah, there was a BPAC meeting on Tuesday, so I just thought I'd give a couple highlights. So I think people have been concerned about the Main Street, sort of stoppage on that. And so I did get a document from Michael Lieber about what their process is going to be. I guess it's about a 9-month timeline now for that, of a new design is kind of what they're looking at. I think also they they're doing a few street surveys over these last month. I think one is going to be at Gateway, like that area, which I can't even imagine what that's going to be like around that mall. And yeah, I think that was it pretty much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that, unless there are any other subcommittee reports or anything else, news for the good of the order, that pretty much brings us to the end of the agenda. Mary's asked, do we need more dialogue about meeting in Zoom or in person? We did do that straw poll at the previous meeting, so.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to, we can, but I'm good moving forward with where we're at. Let us know if you want to take it in a different direction. I did want to share one other info share, and that is some work that my team has been doing for the Art in the Right of Way project. And for those who don't know, the Whitaker Community Council we've been working with them on a traffic control plan and a permit to allow them to paint 9 murals in the Whitaker neighborhood on neighborhoods collector streets. And they painted 3 last weekend. They're painting 3 this weekend, and then 3 crosswalks next weekend. And there was an article in the Register Guard about it last weekend. Unfortunately, because of some vandalism that occurred right before. The topic of most of the murals are around vaccination. And so there is definitely some community sort of upheaval around them. But there is I recommend you go out and look at them. They're some really interesting, and we've been talking about Art in the Right of Way for a long time. We don't have another process in place yet. These were granted some special permits to move forward and went through a different process than we will have for future Art in the Right of Way, but they're happening, and I recommend you go out and check them out. And there will be in September one other one that is just a refresh of the Friendly one that is, I forget the intersection that it's on, but it's in the Friendly neighborhood.
On Olive Street.
Olive Street, thank you.
And I'll just point out, I just saw an article this morning on Streets blog that described art in particularly in intersections, and it actually did improve their safety data, particularly for pedestrians, even if the painting had nothing in particular to do with traffic or safety or anything, but just having the artwork there made things safer for pedestrians. So
yeah, we're starting to see more studies that show that.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost my connection there, but I just wanted to, thank city staff actually, because so I'm on the Whitaker Community Council as well. And we really appreciate staff working with us because as Shane mentioned, we're painting 6 murals and 3 crosswalks. And I think that really, that's more than the city has currently. And so they've done a really great job working with us. Just so everyone knows, we got a CDC Foundation grant. So that's how our neighborhood, we're also a 501c3 nonprofit, not just a neighborhood association. And we got that grant, and the city's really done a great job working with us to help us follow through on that work. And as Shane mentioned, 3 are painted, 3 we painted this weekend, and 3 the following weekend. So we're really excited, and it's great work in our neighborhood, and the city's done I would say a fantastic job working with us on that process, which kind of was non-standard, and we just really upped the game. So I'd love to see other neighborhood associations take up that mantle and paint even more crosswalks and kind of intersection murals.
okay,
Thanks, Andrew.
Unless anybody else has something to say, that's a great note to end on. So thank you all, and I guess we are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.